So when did you become interested in the peak oil?
Well, this was quite a long time ago. Around 2002 or 3, I found out that we were going to have a huge problem with oil. And I thought, that's incredible. Nobody talks about it, and it's going to be a huge problem. So I decided to invest a little bit on the topic, and finally I ended by writing a book about it. That's it, mainly.
And this interest makes you to be worried about it?
To be worried about it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was, in the first place I was quite worried to see how are we going to manage this event nobody seems to care about. Now it's a bit better, but at the very first place, the book I wrote came out in 2005 in France, and it was the first one to be on this topic. So now there are plenty of them, but that was what was worrying me, that nobody was talking about it, and because it is possible to do things and to change, but it takes time, and you can't do it in 5 minutes. So that was the main risk.
In this way, which answer would you like to find in your community or our societies about this problem that we are missing, really?
Well, first the problem is a bit technical, because you have oil. What can we do? We do a lot of things with oil, and then we're going to miss oil. So what can we swap? What energy can we use? How can we manage this, technically speaking? And then I think the problem is not really technical. It's more social, economical. I prefer to say socio-economical. And how are we going to organize ourselves and organize our society to be able to still have a high level of trust between each other and make things work with less energy? So I think the biggest challenge is not technical, but it's social.
How do you value the government's attitude on the problematics originated by the peak oil?
Well, I think for the moment governments are quite slow. It's a problem quite new for people, so the governments can do things, especially in our democracies, when the population knows about it, because then they can say, okay, we're going to change this, and we're going to take this and this decision, which is going to change your life. But if people understand why, because they understood that there was a problem with oil, for instance, then they can accept it. But if you come and say, okay, we're going to change this, this, and this, and the people don't understand why, then they don't have much chances to be re-elected. So they're not very keen on doing it. So they could be sort of leading the world in a sort of saying, okay, I tell you what the problems we're going to have, and then how we're going to solve them. But it's not the way it's working. It's more like the media, some scientists, like people of ASPO, are trying to explain what's going on, and then the politicians come and say, okay, we're going to try to change things, and finally things don't really change because it takes time and it's quite slow.
Which is the ASPO strategy, the ASPO strategy? How did you act?
Well, ASPO is a sort of community of people, mostly scientists, that try to understand what's going on, and there's no real strategy in ASPO. It's more trying to have a place where you can think about these problems and exchange. And so I think that the strategy was to try to, a few years before, was to try to say, hey, we have a problem. So that was the first part I was sort of involved in by writing a book. Now it's different. A lot of people understood it in the elites, let's say. And now we have this financial, economical crisis that's going to change the game, because oil is probably going to be a secondary subject for a while. We don't know yet, but it's possible. And there has to be either another strategy, or just to say, okay, we did what we had to do, and it's finished with ASPO. We no need to carry on with it. So I don't know. It's not decided because there's nobody who can really decide it.
France is highly regarded by other countries for his history, fight for rights in general. As a society, how do you assimilate the peak oil? Is it a problem in France?
Yeah, I think peak oil is a kind of problem that could lead to a revolution like the French Revolution in 2 centuries ago, where we sort of cut the head of the king at the time, so it would be more the president today. I don't know if it's a country like us, France, that's going to face it, or United States, which is in a bad situation. But yes, I think it's the kind of issue we're facing, like revolution. It's a revolution for a society, and for the poorest people it's a revolution too. But it's not sure, because already we have a lot of adverts about goods that, things like luxury cars that 90% of the population cannot buy. But there's no revolution. There could be a revolution already. So it's as long as people can eat, maybe it's enough. But so it's hard to say. It's nothing's going to be automatic. It's not sure that it's going to be a revolution. I think the financial crisis is very interesting because the governments have found billions to help the banks, and they were saying more or less that there was no money. Actually, the French Prime Minister said a bit more than a year ago that the bank, I don't know how he's saying, the bank was empty. There was there was no money in the state of France, which was a bit strange and crazy. And now they found billions, hundreds of billions to save the banks. So the next step is going to be interesting. It's in 1 or 2 years when the economic crisis is going to be strong, and they're going to say, no, we can't do anything. Then you say, okay, when you had to save the banks a few years ago, you found the money. So what's this? So now it could be interesting. And of course you have some areas in the world that are more keen than others to do revolutions, and the reaction could be different from a place to another. That's quite sure. But I don't know what to say more about your question, really.